You know that feeling when you're sitting in a packed coffee shop, totally surrounded by people, but you feel completely isolated? You look around, and literally everyone is glued to a screen, managing their perfectly optimized schedules. And you just kind of wonder, is genuine connection even possible anymore? In this explainer, we're going to dive into some fascinating source material that suggests these everyday struggles with work, tech, and each other aren't just modern annoyances. They're actually profound philosophical problems. What if that absolutely exhausting morning meeting you had, or your constant urge to check your smartwatch, is part of this massive, invisible architecture shaping what it means to be human? Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We'll kick things off with Section 1, the problem of peer connection. Then we'll move into 2, cyborgs and surveillance capitalism. Explore 3, the burnout society trap. Discuss 4, the power of the killjoy. And finally wrap it all up with 5, the meeting that continues. Section 1, the problem of peer connection. The struggle to truly meet another person. Let's start by meeting two people on a Tuesday morning at their local coffee shop. We've got B, a grad student reading philosophy, and L, a housing advocate who accidentally forgot her noise-canceling headphones. And because she forgot her usual armor, a rare, totally unscripted conversation actually begins. But as they talk, they realize they aren't just two random individuals. They're carrying the heavy weight of history, gender, and power right into the room with them. The philosopher Martin Buber breaks this down perfectly. He contrasts the transactional I-it orientation, where you see the barista as just a coffee dispenser, an object to be used, with the deeply reciprocal I-thou mode, where the other person is a full human mystery, completely irreducible. The big problem B and L face is whether true I-thou connection is even possible when our society basically trains us to constantly categorize each other. So this brings us to Emmanuel Levinas. He's a philosopher who built this concept called the face after surviving the Holocaust. He argued that before we even speak, a person's physical vulnerability makes this primordial ethical demand on us. It's an unspoken plea saying, "Do not kill me," a foundational demand for basic humanity before any words are exchanged. Our character Al actually applies this exact framework to her housing advocacy. When families get displaced by urban rezoning, it's not just some data point, right? It's a dignity violation. It's the bureaucracy totally refusing to see the face of the other. A really brilliant quote by poet Adrienne Rich nails our character's dilemma. She said, "This is the oppressor's language, yet I need it to talk to you." We are literally forced to use the very structures and languages that oppress us just to communicate. Structural barriers of gender and power make a pure, unblemished connection basically impossible. Yet, B&L try to honestly meet anyway. They just sit in the messy reality of what the source text calls the troubled thou. It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? Two people just striving to connect despite the immense weight of history. But we really have to ask ourselves, can we truly connect when our very attention, our literal ability to focus on the person sitting right across the table, is being actively mined and monetized by the devices in our pockets? Which leads us to Section 2, Cyborgs and Surveillance Capitalism, the Technological Barrier. Let's step away from the coffee shop for a minute and meet C, a brilliant UI designer. C's daily life is the perfect example of how our devices have permanently, and I mean permanently, blurred the line between the natural and the artificial. Donna Haraway made this crucial argument that we are all already cyborgs. We tend to harbor this fantasy of the goddess, the pure, pre-technological, natural human. But the reality? It's the cyborg. We are deeply entangled with and modified by the very tools we use. Think about C going for a run in the forest. She's surrounded by nature, sure, but her smartwatch is tracking her heart rate, mapping her route, and feeding her biological data straight into behavioral models. So much for getting away from it all, right? Theorist Karen Barad calls this concept interaction. The idea is that the apparatus of observation doesn't just reveal a phenomenon, it actively participates in producing it. In C's world of app design, a software interface isn't just quietly sitting there waiting for you to click. It actively shapes what you want. It produces behaviors. C knows for a fact that a slight change she makes to an app's navigation will physically alter the habits of millions of people, extracting their attention as a resource. Let's see how this builds into the modern workplace in Section 3, the burnout society trap, optimization, and exhaustion. Enter H. He's an independent consultant who is essentially a company of one. H's life is a total masterclass in how modern surveillance tech merges with our working lives to create this completely inescapable trap. Through the lens of thinkers like Byung-Chul Han and Shoshana Zuboff, we see Homo trapped in a relentless loop. Think about it. The modern worker is simultaneously their own master and their own exploiter.
Step 1. Homo tries to self-optimize to get ahead. Step 2. This generates massive amounts of behavioral data for surveillance capitalism. Step 3. This leads inevitably to profound burnout. And step 4? Well, the prescribed cure for burnout is just more self-optimization. It's a vicious, exhausting cycle.
Just think about the reality of H's daily existence. He has literally outsourced the entire temporal structure of his life to a color-coded calendar. Because hey, if it's not in the blue block, does it even exist? His sleep and heart rate are graded by wearable tech. His moods are fed into behavioral models without any meaningful consent. He's constantly performing this role of the successful, highly optimized entrepreneur, even when he's entirely alone. He is authentically depleted, yet totally trapped by his own productivity systems. So, how on earth do we break out of this? That brings us to Section 4, the power of the killjoy, the structural barrier, and the art of resistance. Let's shift the narrative over to a corporate meeting room ironically named Kilimanjaro. Here we meet Kay, who is navigating the absolutely exhausting daily performance of corporate compliance. During this diversity and inclusion presentation that's totally dancing around the real issues, Kay does something dangerous. She embodies Sarah Ahmed's concept of the feminist killjoy, the person who simply refuses to go along with the performance. She raises her hand and points out the very uncomfortable, unspoken reality of pay inequity right there in her own department. By refusing to just nod along, she shatters what Hannah Arendt would call the banality of thoughtlessness. It isolates her, for sure, but it forces the truth right into the middle of the room. This act of speaking up is what you'd call a micro-resistance. The theorist Mark Fisher warned us that our current systems, capitalism specifically, are incredibly good at absorbing, incorporating, and neutralizing critique. The true challenge, he argued, is whether we can actually imagine alternatives. How do everyday people actually survive these heavy, heavy structures of performativity and surveillance? The source text gives us a beautiful answer through Fred Moten's idea of the undercommons. We meet F and M, who gather with friends in a living room on Tuesday nights just to read and argue. They aren't a formal institution. They're producing and sharing knowledge that has zero market value. They're actively refusing the demand to be single, isolated individuals. One of them even makes art, specifically a chair that cannot be sat in, just to completely escape being categorized or used by the system. And you know, resistance doesn't always look like a loud protest. Sometimes it's just a stubborn presence. Take the really emotional story of a tenant facing displacement. In year 1, he moves into the apartment building. Fast forward to year 31, and his wife passes away in that very same home. Then, in year 32, he stands up in a community tenant meeting and simply states that he will not move for the developers. He flat out refuses to become a legible, easily manageable obstacle on some developer's spreadsheet. It's just a profound, quiet act of political resistance. All right, Section 5, the meeting that continues, weaving it all together. Let's bring all these brilliant philosophical threads into a single Tuesday morning in the city, where all of these characters exist simultaneously, brushing past each other in the grand tapestry of modern life. The text paints this incredible picture of a deeply interconnected modern holobiont, a sort of superorganism where all our lives and technologies are just hopelessly entangled. B and L are in the coffee shop, finding a troubled but real connection. C is out in the post-human forest, running as a cyborg. M is sitting quietly with a frightened patient, offering pure care. H is staring blankly at his optimized calendar, trapped but aware. And K is walking into Kilimanjaro to speak the truth. Every single one of them is navigating their own burnouts, categorizations, and finding their own micro-resistances. This brings us full circle, right back to Martin Buber's assertion that all real living is meeting. Because despite the crushing weight of structural barriers, despite surveillance capitalism and the burnout society trap, these everyday acts of witnessing and connecting, they still happen. We still gather in living rooms instead of institutions. We still look up from our books to speak to a stranger. These messy, imperfect meetings are exactly what make life real. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we're left with a bit of a reality check. The systems that categorize and exhaust us, they are heavy, the extraction continues, and they aren't going to weigh anytime soon. But the meeting, the genuine human connection, happens anyway. So, knowing all of this, knowing the invisible architectures all around you, how will you meet the world tomorrow morning?